Welcome to Durrës, Albania's second largest city for Europe district, our magazine on EU enlargement. Until the fall of communism in 1990, Albania was known as the North Korea of Europe. It was one of the most repressive and isolationist regimes. 20 years later, Albania has come a long way. It's still one of Europe's poorest nations, but it's determined to join the European Union. And there was some good news in the latest EU Commission report. We'll also travel to the city of Strasbourg to meet Sali Berisha, the country's Prime Minister. We'll talk to environmentalists who say Albania has been turned into the garbage can of Europe. And we'll ask what to do with the many communist-era bunkers that litter the country. Well, let's move to our first story. In its latest report, the European Commission recommended that member states give Albania candidate status, a first step towards EU membership. The news was celebrated across Albania, but Brussels set new conditions. It wants to see further reforms to the judiciary and public administration. Stefan Fula, a superstar in Albania. All of the country's television stations broadcasted the European Commissioner for Enlargement's recent speech. Speaking on behalf of the EU Commission, Fula recommended the European Council make Albania a membership candidate from this December. The same day, Prime Minister Sali Berisha met the EU's ambassador. Berisha is hoping the news will give him a political boost.
I'm very thankful. Thank you very much. It's a great report, historic one.
The speech that follows, also brimming with praise.
Mr. Ambassador, this comes after 100 years of effort by Albania and Albanians. In the periods when they were free, Albanians never had any other objectives than cooperation, integration of their country into Europe, and now the European Union.
Yet the report also delivered a damning indictment of Albania's shortcomings. The country failed to meet 4 of the EU's 12 demands. Brussels is now asking the country's parliament to focus on 5 key areas: elections meeting European and international standards, establishing a fully independent judicial system, efforts fighting organised crime, protection of human rights, and reforming property rights. Albania's opposition say they won't let the ruling Democratic Party claim the credit for the EU candidacy. They say blame for the country's failings lies with the party in power.
If we compare between today and 7 years ago, the time that this government has been in power, now we don't have a freer and more honest election system. We don't have a freer and more professional justice system, and our state doesn't resemble a European state.
With 86% of Albanians in favour of EU membership, a recent survey showed the country is the most pro-European Balkan nation. Skender Pajaj is one of these Albanian Europhiles. His shoemaking company employs 700 staff, turning out some 4,000 pairs of footwear a day for export to Spain and Italy. He says he's nothing to fear from future reforms.
The European Union would allow my business to work with more people. This would also mean we'd be labelled as European company. It would be positive for our image and would let us get away from the negative image that Albania has.
High enthusiasm then for EU membership. NGO Transparency International says there's still work to be done before Albania measures up.
If you refer the Transparency International Index on corruption, perception on corruption, so the Albania is on the bottom. The reasons are different, but well, if I can sum up with few words, it's new society in transition with a weak institutions.
Elections last year saw candidates attacked, several demonstrators killed, and dozens of other incidents reported. International observers will be watching closely when Albanians next go to the polls in 2013. Meanwhile, in the capital, the festivities roll on, Albanians celebrating the first step on the road to Europe. And for more on the story of EU membership, let's go straight to the Council of Europe in Strasbourg to meet Sali Berisha, the Prime Minister of Albania. His country is marking the last days of the Albanian presidency of the Council of Europe. Mr. Berisha, thank you for having us. Why is it so important for Albania to receive candidate status from the European Union?
It's really very crucial because Albanians are deeply convinced their best future is in European Union. More than 94% of my fellow citizens support this project. I think they are smart people because they believe, and they are right to believe, that in this process they become more free, they become more secure, they become more prosperous. That's why the government is obliged to do its best to work upon this project.
Several polls have indicated that Europeans suffer from so-called enlargement fatigue, probably partly because of the crisis. Do you still feel welcome?
Definitely there is not a warmth about enlargement, but still doors are open. And the Commission do a very serious work in helping, preparing my nation, but also with all other countries in this process. Look, this is a very, very helpful process to our nation because it's a process, a universe of norms, standards, criteria, which really makes citizens more free.
Are you yourself happy about the state of democracy in your country?
I believe the democracy is to be consolidated, but what it is very important, democracy is also to be learned. If you look at my country, it faced 2 years long a boycott from the opposition with no legal reason. But now opposition is working in parliament and we managed to complete some very important reforms. One of them was election reforms and another which I consider very historic, this removal of immunities in Albania.
Leading NGOs and the European Union are saying there's still a lot to do to tackle corruption and organized crime. Who is responsible for this bad reputation?
Look, let's take organized crime. Albania dismantled more than 206 criminal groups and organizations. It apprehended and put to justice more than 1,000 members of and bosses of these criminal organizations. If you look at my country, when I came in power, there have been 1,800 prisoners, and now there are around 5,000. That is, the law is enforced in my country, and indices of serious crimes are lower than the average of European Union. Let's come to corruption. Albania a few years ago ranked amongst 24 most corrupted countries. Albania, according to World Bank, have had around every year lost from evasions and smuggling more than $1.4 billion. But what the situation is now, still there is corruption, but there is a very strong fighting against it. In this 6 years, my country got from customs and taxes more than $8.3 billion. We have one of the most transparent systems in the world about procurement. We become the first full e-procurement country in the world 2009. There is still corruption, but a strong fighting against it.
Sali Berisha, Prime Minister of Albania, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
To join the European Union, Albania will have to meet Europe's environmental criteria. Now, judging from the dirty waters of the sea promenade in central Durrës, it won't be for tomorrow. Environmentalists complain the country has been turned into the rubbish can of Europe due to the import of large amount of waste from neighboring countries.
Only a few kilometers from the heart of the capital, Tirana, Aldo shows us to an open rubbish dump nestling amidst a residential area.
It's crazy, you know, when you see all this rubbish around here, and meanwhile all these people are living here and, you know, getting sick and everything, and nobody's doing anything about that.
Aldo's rallied a host of associations against a law governing waste management. Passed last year, the legislation allows companies to import waste from abroad for recycling in Albania. For Aldo, the government's putting big business ahead of the environment.
Since there is a lot of requests from businesses to open up big businesses and to recycle waste, the Albanian government should make sure that to give them enough waste, like there is not enough already in this country. And this is the only argument that they gave so far.
Aldo's now succeeded in securing a referendum on the issue. Campaigning in the street and on social networks, his group gathered the 50,000 signatures needed to force a vote, a first for Albania. After much bureaucratic delay, the referendum should go ahead in November next year. The government says they're in line with European legislation, limiting the types of waste they can legally import. Albania's environment minister says he doesn't understand the recent protests.
If they come with one article that presents a risk to the environment or to the life of the people, or any import that presents a threat, when the recycling company want to import it, let's stop it. Let's take it out of the list. I think that's the solution. If then they want to use that for, you know, populist movement and, you know, political purpose, that's not a way I can stop them to think differently.
The government says the country's fledgling recycling industry couldn't survive on the proceeds of domestic waste alone. Yet NGOs are concerned that the government's letting pollution generated by recycling get out of hand. Elbasan used to be a fertile valley. The country's Cold War dictatorship transformed the area into a highly polluting metallurgical complex. Amid the derelict buildings is a factory used by Turkish company Kurum for recycling metals. The factory has had a direct impact on the local population.
We have breathing problems. It has a negative effect on our health. The fumes affect our everyday life. It hurts our eyes.
Sheva here's been waiting for years for the government to restore the area that used to be his childhood playing field. During the communist period, the site was contaminated with heavy metals and radioactive substances. Since then, it hasn't been cleaned up. Even today, waste is still being dumped here, seeping into the river.
This whole area is polluted. All the waste produced by the plant throughout all those years has completely polluted the soil and water.
A lack of resources makes it tough for the government to guard against illegal dumping. Experts on the Italian mafia have warned against the danger posed by this lucrative black market business.
To destroy or not to destroy, that's the question when it comes to the legacy of the communist period. 500,000 bunkers were built by Enver Hoxha. Albania's paranoid dictator was known to fear invasion and even a nuclear attack. But some have found new ways to use Albania's bunkers.
Hundreds of thousands of bunkers like this one are scattered across Albania, reminders of the darker moments of the nation's history. More than 6 decades ago, Preal Marash's family caught the eye of the country's post-war dictatorship. In 1946, his father's land facing the sea aroused the envy of the Albanian army.
From the forest you can see there up to the army barracks at the edge of the water, all that land was ours. The military saw how big it was, and we were accused of being large landowners, so they decided to send my father to prison, even though at the time he was only 18 years old.
Preal Marash's father was among the 35,000 Albanians sentenced to forced labor. During the Cold War, communist leader Enver Hoxha gradually distanced himself from former allies Russia and China. Fearing foreign invasion, Hoxha emptied the country's coffers, covering Albania with military bunkers. When he died, Albania began handing back land to the original owners. Preal Marash, born in a concentration camp, inherited the grounds that once belonged to his father. The farmer is forbidden from destroying the bunkers, still property of the Albanian government.
We had a few months ago a round table with different actors. The Ministry of Defense and the military were part of that. We need to follow that up in order to ask from them how we can use the military infrastructure, bunkers are part of it, for touristic purposes.
Many Albanians want to get rid of the bunkers. Others prefer to keep them for memory's sake. The School of Architecture in the capital Tirana has worked with a German university pioneering a project called Bed and Bunker.
If we destroy them, part of history will be lost. There's been so much destruction throughout our history, so we'd like to keep some of them, including those that are interesting from the point of view of tourism.
Students have converted the bunkers into budget lodgings for truck drivers and holidaymakers. The building's unusual design presents a unique challenge to these budding architects. The students hope others will now follow their lead. Similar projects have already emerged, transforming bunkers into tattoo parlors, art galleries, and a restaurant like this one. Sadly, the bunker here is set to be demolished, replaced by a block of flats with a view over the sea.
And I'm back in the center of Durrës. You can see the old Venetian tower just behind me. It's the end of the first part of Europe District, but we'll return after the news break. We'll meet a new guest in the program. Blendi Fevziu is the author of a biography of dictator Enver Hoxha. Together, we'll revisit Albania's turbulent past.